Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Troy Boisjoli from ATHA Energy. Today's a really exciting day for me to have Troy on because the company just announced a huge merger with Latitude Uranium and 92 Energy. And the reaction on the street to the deal has been quite positive because the company was planning to do a $14 million concurrent financing, and they've already upsized it to $22 million. So now they're going to have over $60 million on the balance sheet to play with, and over 7 million acres to go and explore. The reason I love this deal so much is because they've also got an unbelievably experienced team at going out and discovering uranium assets to go with that land position and cash position to go and discover what could be the next world-class uranium asset. Which normally when we hear these things from junior mining companies, you kind of roll your eyes and go, well, everyone says that. Well, no, in this case here, if you actually look at the backgrounds of this management team, all the cash they have and the size of the land position, it puts them in a very, very small group of companies, possibly the only one that has anything close to this if you want to play that exploration game and get that torque with something that has just so much going for it. We start off the interview with me asking Troy about what's happening in the uranium market, like how Poland today announced that they're going to be constructing a whole bunch of new nuclear facilities, how sentiment has changed massively over the last few years towards nuclear power generation. And then we get into the deal structure of the new merger for ATHA Energy. And I ask a few questions along the lines of getting an Australian listing, which he says he's open to. And we get into what the goals for 2024 and what a successful 2024 looks like for ATHA Energy. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Troy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, great to be here.
So let's start off with some general uranium sector news. Today, it got announced that there's going to be 24 new nuclear reactors that are going to be constructed in Poland. Do you think this is a sign that sentiment has finally changed towards nuclear energy to a point where this is going to be the new common energy source around the world, at least where it makes sense from a geological perspective?
Yeah, no, I think hands down, no question, that there has been a step change in public perception, a step change in the understanding of the need and requirement for nuclear energy. And, that's driven by public sentiment. And then in turn, that's followed by policy. And we're seeing the policy follow the public sentiment right now. And, what that sets up is an incredibly exciting time in the uranium space. Because when you look at the supply-demand fundamentals, they're extremely strong. And that's without this new onslaught of growth.
So since the last time we spoke, uranium's actually gone up substantially. So let's hope that you're a good luck charm again, and we see that continue to rally. We're now over $80 a pound, prices we haven't seen in nearly a decade. What's your assessment right now of what's happening in the uranium market? Can it go higher from here? Can it sustain itself at $80 a pound?
Yeah, my view is not only can it sustain itself, but it still needs to go higher. You look at the supply demand fundamentals from the primary supply uranium market, and we still haven't reached that incentive price that's required to bring on new production. So not only can it sustain where it's at, but it certainly needs to go higher, and it needs to go higher for longer.
I assume we're around during the 2007, 2008 run when uranium went bonkers and a lot of money was made. I know some stories of just general IR guys that had options in companies that made tens of millions of dollars. Just one of those things that gets in the back of people's minds. And I think that's why we have such a huge uranium community online of people who they haven't given up the thesis because they saw it happen once. So if we look at what's happening today versus what we saw in 2007, 2008, are there any differences or any analogs that you see that are happening today that happened back in 2007, 2008?
Yeah, what drives that is that the uranium market is a very small market. When you look at the total number of uranium companies out there, the total number of producers, explorers, et cetera, it's a very, very small market. So, the similarities are when the attention, of the capital markets industry and of the investment community starts to turn towards uranium, there's very few places to invest, and there's very few names in the uranium space, and that leads to a result and an outcome like you were talking about. It leads to an extremely violent price action within the equities, and it's a function of having a bigger market than there, or having fewer names, and a lot of capital looking to invest in a sector that is fundamental.
And I think that's something that really sets ATHA Energy, and we're going to get into ATHA Energy and the big news in a second. But I believe that something that really sets you guys apart versus many of the other names that are out there is that we've got these sort of grassroots exploration names, and I know that you can get a lot of torque in those names when the market goes ballistic, as people say in these markets, even pigs fly. But really, when we look at the space, my assessment is that there's actually very few companies that have a shot of getting those grades and those projects that actually are viable to get turned into production. And when I look at the land package that you guys have and the cash you have and all the experience you have, I feel like with ATHA Energy, we actually have a shot here, even though you guys don't have a flagship asset yet, but tremendous land package. You guys actually have a shot of, my expectation is with this amount of land, this amount of money, and this amount of experience, that you guys are going to go and discover a flagship asset that is going to be something that could potentially go into production.
Yeah, and maybe this is probably a good time to talk about the deal structure that we just struck. It's a proposed merger between three different companies, between ATHA Energy, between 92 Energy, and between Latitude Uranium. Latitude Uranium comes to the table with an asset base. There's 43 million pounds at 0.69%, and the Angulac project that's in the territory of Nunavut. They also have there's also pounds on the books in the Central Mineral District in the east coast of Canada. Then you look at 92 Energy. 92 Energy has a post-discovery corridor, which is the GMZ zone. It's an underexplored, discovered corridor, basement-hosted uranium mineralized corridor in the Athabasca, on the eastern edge of the Athabasca Basin. And so you couple the strength of those assets and the maturity of the assets in those two companies, with the formation and the basis of ATHA, with our dominant land package across the Athabasca Basin. And what we offer is truly an unparalleled, unmatched exposure to uranium exploration upside across Canada. We're in the three dominant uranium jurisdictions across the country and have a materially large position across all three.
7.1 million acres of land.
Yes.
A cash position of $55 million.
That was pre-upsizing. Today, the markets responded very favorably to the offering, and we just announced an upsizing to 22.8 million.
Wow. Are you able to talk about any of the investors that are coming into the financing?
Yeah, so a couple key investors, a couple cornerstone investors in the senior offering of that capital raise. Primarily ISO Energy. ISO Energy is a shareholder of 92 and LUR of both names, and they showed tremendous support for the deal by backstopping the capital raise. So that support and longevity aligned with one of the most successful recent discoveries in the Athabasca Basin.
One of the things that I thought of when I first saw the deal structure is that I think it's 92 Energy is currently listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. Is there any interest in you guys having a dual listing at some point in Australia?
No. Hey, the Australian markets, they clearly understand uranium, and they clearly understand exploration. However, due to the complexity of a three-way transaction and maintaining a dual listing through that, it's not in the cards right now, but down the road, certainly that's something we'd entertain.
Okay, interesting. Now, let's get into some of the recent exploration you guys have been doing. You guys did a large scale electromagnetic survey at the East Apex project. You identified 267 kilometers of conductive lineaments and 18 prospective targets. Can you elaborate on how the findings that you guys had during your survey matched up with sort of what your expectations were going in?
Yeah, the entire thesis with the land package that we have in the Athabasca Basin, the core assets of ATHA pre-merger, is pretty simple. We have the most dominant land position in the best uranium jurisdiction in the world, and through investment this year, through the investment that we made in the largest ever EM survey across that land package and across the Athabasca Basin, the whole objective was to mature that land position, mature it from an exploration perspective, de-risk it, identify high priority targets, and then very importantly, given the greenfields nature of those targets, be able to test the highest priority targets first. So it's not an area where there's been 10 or 15 successive years of drilling. This is an area where we get to test the highest priority targets first that we define through the work that we're doing right now.
So how do you figure out what are those high priority targets?
Yeah, you look at us. The targeting model in the Athabasca Basin has been evolving and maturing for years. Starting off, in the Beaver Lodge district where we have ground on the north edge of the basin, then continuing through to where we're at today. You leverage modern geophysical techniques. You leverage modern airborne geophysics, and then you're looking for conductive corridors, and then following that, you're looking for proxies for alteration through different geophysical surveys, and then ideally you have a geochemical overlay on top of that and a geochemical signature that continues to vector you into high probability, high priority targets. And we're seeing that with a number of our target areas. We're seeing, the conductor complexity from the EM surveys that we want to see. And then, based off of regional geochemical sampling that's been done historically, elevated uranium, elevated mineralization, down ice, on trend of the structural disruption as per the conductors that we want to see. So we're building up a significant portfolio of high quality exploration targets across the Athabasca Basin through the maturation of our land position.
So if I'm understanding what you said correctly, and I'm not a geo, so I apologize if this sounds like a stupid question, but you guys are doing the electromagnetic survey, and then you guys also have boots on the ground that are going and grabbing samples, so you can that's how you're getting the geochemical.
Well, something we're leveraging. We've got a team of people that are digitizing historic records and have been for months. And you can dig a lot of valuable data out of historic records that are archived with the province of Saskatchewan. You overlay that on top of new data, and then that helps focus you in. The idea is you go from geophysics, airborne geophysics, ultimately to ground geophysics, ground sampling, and then to drilling. And it's a systematic de-risking of your targets.
So basically, you guys have this massive land package, and you're just basically trying to get as much data as you can, and that's how. Then effectively, that's how you're identifying the targets.
That's right. Yeah, very good summary. That's exactly how we're identifying the targets, and importantly, every layer of data that you add on reduces the uncertainty and increases probability, and that's exactly what we're after when we're deploying risk capital.
I don't know if you can answer this, but I know you've worked for some of the major uranium companies. Do they have databases like this on the Athabasca Basin where they've sort of got the ability to identify targets, or are they not thinking about exploration like that?
Yeah, no. Hey, there's been companies that have been successful exploring using multiple techniques across the basin. The longevity of some of the producing companies in the basin means that they have large databases that they've built up and that they leverage. But the advantage that we have is that we have a significantly larger land position. And at a core basis, exploration is a business of probability, and probability increases with scale. So having the largest land position in the best uranium jurisdiction in the world, and as a function of this acquisition, proposed acquisition between ATHA acquiring 92E and acquiring LUR, Latitude Uranium, we have the most dominant land position in the uranium space across the three premier uranium jurisdictions in Canada. We have post-discovery trends in the Athabasca Basin. We have mineral resources, inferred mineral resources in Nunavut, 43 million pounds at 0.69%, which is one of the highest grade deposits outside of the Athabasca Basin globally. And that gives us an unparalleled profile in terms of expanding the known zones of mineralization, doing de-risk exploration along mature corridors, and at the same time building up an unparalleled portfolio of exploration targets.
So are we going to see drills in the ground in 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely we will.
So for investors watching, what are the milestones or timelines that they should be watching out for over the next 12 months? If we're sitting down in a year chatting, what does a successful year look like for ATHA Energy in 2024?
Yeah, 2024 over Q1. Hey, we're going to continue to execute our greenfields exploration strategy in Q1. We have terabytes of data that have come back. We're processing data, and we're planning additional geophysical work. In parallel to that, Latitude Uranium and 92 Energy will also be conducting work in preparation for an anticipation of the deal closing in Q1, and then drill programs from there. Focusing on assets, mature assets, and then working our way back into our greenfields pipeline of projects.
Well, Troy, thanks so much for hopping on here, and congratulations on the big news. I'm very excited to see what you guys do with everything you've assembled and the treasure chest you guys have to go and discover some even bigger assets.
Yeah. Hey, we're extremely excited. We're extremely excited about the platform that this gives us, particularly given the macro environment in the uranium space.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, let me know what you think in the comment section.